their concerns with the board and receive clear direction on any changes that will be made to the policy within the time frame established by statute. Members, upon accepting amendments of the Water Parks and Wildlife Committee, environmental groups remove their opposition to the bill. This expresses several groups during the committee hearing, so I urge your aye vote.
Move the bill.
Very good. The measure has been moved by Mr. Davis, seconded by Mr. Blumenfield. Any questions for the author? Any witnesses in support or opposition? Hearing and seeing none, the measure is out on an A roll call. Mr. Bradford,
thank you, Mr.
for
Chair
your
and committee
presentation.
members.
Let's see here. Mr. Davis, would you like to present on your measure?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Campos. We will take Mr. Davis, and you will be
CD. Well, you want me to defer?
Dealt with after Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, I have three, and I will make these quick. The first one is AB 126.
Very good. That enjoys a do pass with amendments recommendation. You may proceed.
I accept the amendments recommended, and in addition to that, this bill will simply disclose the name of those advising the judges on on judicial appointments. And I think we have some witnesses. I don't know if
very good. The measure's been moved and seconded. Your first witness in support.
My witnesses in support. We have the California Public Defenders available, and okay.
How about witnesses in opposition?
Okay.
Hearing and seeing none, you say the public defenders are in support?
Yes, sir.
Very good. We will take your word for it. The measure has been properly moved and seconded. It enjoys a do pass with amendments recommendation, and that measure is out on a B roll call, Mr. Davis.
Thank you very much.
Assembly Bill 1084, previously on consent, also enjoys a do pass recommendation. The floor is yours.
This bill will simply create an opportunity economically for veterans who may not normally fit into the category of standard home purchases to receive and benefit financial assets to get shared equity cooperative living arrangements. In essence, the bill will increase the numbers of veterans who will have appropriate housing for themselves.
Very good. The measure has been moved by Mr. Bradford, seconded by Mr. Hill. Your first witness in support.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm Chuck Helgett.
If you can press that, there we go. No, we're good.
Got it. Chuck Helgett, representing the Vietnam Veterans of California, the California Association of Veterans Services Agencies, the U.S. Veterans Initiative, Swords to Plowshares, Vietnam Vets of San Diego, and New Directions, in strong support of the bill.
Very good. Any additional witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Republican roll call?
It will be a roll call. I'm recommending an aye vote, but we did have some people in the Veterans Committee that laid off the vote, so I will leave it to the members. I'm aye.
Harkey, aye. Donnelly? Nielsen? Nielsen, aye. Norby?
Aye.
Norby, aye. Wagner?
Very good. That measure is out. Thank you, Mr. Davis, for your presentation. Ms. Campos, to be followed by Mr. Calderon. Committee Member Campos, your bill, Assembly Bill 551, has a do pass recommendation. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. AB 551 will strengthen the state's Prevailing Wage Act by increasing the penalties for abusive of the act. Currently, contractors and subcontractors who are found in violation of the State Prevailing Wage Act pay minor monetary penalty that does not act as a real deterrent. This bill will actually increase the penalties, and also it was recommended by the state auditor to amend this as well, since it hadn't been amended in over 2 years. So I have some members here in support.
Thank you, Ms. Campos, for your presentation. First witness in support.
Mr. Chair, Member Cesar Diaz on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. As Ms. Campos stated, the state auditor came up with a report. It recommended to the governor for agencies and departments that have a fee or penalty authority to look at and adjust those fees in order to increase revenue because of the current budget deficit. This bill will create a further deterrent to prevent against prevailing wage violations. and add some teeth to the law to prevent against these unscrupulous contractors who are out there stealing from workers' wages, but also from the state and taxpayers. So
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Next witness in support.
Patrick Henry on behalf of the California State Council of Labor. This is a reasonable increase in a time when the state desperately needs money. I appreciate your support.
Additional witnesses in support?
Sarah Flox on behalf of the California Labor Federation, also in support.
Witnesses in opposition? Hearing and seeing none, the measure enjoys a proper motion and second and is out on a B roll call. Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Campos.
you.
Oh, we've got Correa. Mr. Correa. The floor is yours, Mr. Correa.
Mr. Chair, honorables, thank you very much. Presenting before you Senate Bill 151, and as you might have heard, this bill has gotten a lot of attention, a lot of press, and a lot of hard questions have been asked, as well as they should be. This bill has been published, has been analyzed, reanalyzed numerous times. We're not presenting this bill in the middle of the night, but rather here in front of you for all of you to review and hopefully get your support. Senate Bill 151 is 6 MOUs covering 6 bargaining units put together. First bargaining unit, number 2 attorneys, number 6 correctional peace officers, number 7 protective services and public safety, number 9 professional engineers, number 10 scientists, number 13 stationary engineers. There's a lot here, but let me go over, if I can, some of the key elements of this Senate Bill 151. First of all, in terms of pension savings, the bill calls for permanently increasing contributions from employees from an additional 2 to 5% of their base pay, increasing their retirement contribution to 8 to 11%. The result is over $350 million in savings. Let me repeat, over $350 million in savings. It eliminates the defined contribution plan. The states, in other words, the state will stop paying 2% contribution of bargaining unit number 6 employees' base pay. Savings results $137 million. It also, for 12 months, employees' pay will be reduced by 4.62%. And in return, employees will receive 8 hours of non-cashable leave in return. Savings, $232 million. Part of this, there was a salary increase at the end of the MOU's lifespan. In 2013, employees at the top step of their salary range will see a pay increase that will offset their increased pension contribution. This increase will take these employees back to their salary levels that they were at 5 years ago. The cost to taxpayers of the salary increase is $152 million. So if you take directly the pension savings of $350 million less the salary increase of $152, the state is ahead by about $200 million. Other important issues addressed here on the management side. California Department of Correction has obtained what prior administrations have been looking for, which is additional flexibility in managing the system under this MOU. California Department of Corrections and Bargaining Unit 6 will negotiate on management issues, essentially saying meet and confer is preserved, but after 30 days, should there be no agreement reached, the last and final offer will be implemented. Under this MOU, also, leave time is not considered time worked for overtime purposes. There are 2 non-cashable leave days per year, but these are either use or you lose. Another important issue that's been discussed and written about considerably is the removal of the cap on the accrued leave. Actually, there's been a lot of controversy, and frankly, it's a little bit confusing because there is conflicting state policy on this issue. First, let me say that according to the DPA, there exists no cap. But according to state policy, there is a cap. But that cap is rarely, if ever, enforced. Why? Because if you force people to take their leave, then that means you've got to go out and hire more guards to take care of a 7-day, 24-hour-a-week job, which presents other fiscal pressures on the other side of the prison system. This MOU, essentially, once and for all, declares that there is no cap, essentially establishing what has been long-held practice. Other issues on this accrued leave. It's been said that this accrued leave has been used to spike pensions. Let me restate that it is against the law to do so, and this MOU continues to declare that it is against the law to use your accrued leave to spike your pension. What you can do with your accrued leave is cash it in, pay taxes on it, and walk away. Another issue, the furlough program. This set of MOUs does end the furlough program. SB 151 ends the furlough program in March instead of June. The state loses 9 furlough days, yet SB 151 calls for 12 days of leave over the next 12 months. So actually, the state is 3 days ahead. Those are some of the main highlights of this SB 151. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Correa. Let's go to your witnesses.
Good morning, Chair and members. This is Tom Dyer, Department of Personnel Administration, sponsor of this bill, and we urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Brooks Ellison on behalf of CASE, California Attorneys, Administrative Law Judges, and Hearing Officers in State Employment Bargaining Unit 2 in support.
Any additional witnesses in support?
Richard Gillihan, Department of Finance. We would just note that the MOUs in this bill would cover about 51,000 PYs, or about 30% of the state's rank and file workforce, and would bring them all under contract. We estimate that the net result of these MOUs would save $323 million general fund in the budget year, or in the current year, and $110.8 million general fund in the budget year.
Thank you, Department of Finance. Additional witnesses in support?
Mr. Chairman, Steve Crouch, International Union of Operating Engineers, in support.
Mr. Chair and members, Pat Moran with Aaron Reed and Associates, representing the professional engineers in California government and the California Association of Professional Scientists, in support.
Craig Brown, California Correctional Peace Officers Association, in support.
Mr. Chair and members, Kobe Pizzotti with California Statewide Law Enforcement Association, in support.
Any additional witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Hearing and seeing none, members, any questions for our author? Very good. That measure enjoys a motion by Mr. Solorio, a second by Mr. Bradford, and that measure is out on a B roll call. Thank you, Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Member.
Very good, members. We will continue here. Mr. Huffman, it appears that is available to present on his measure. Very good, Mr. Huffman. You are presenting on Assembly Bill 42, has a due pass with amendments recommendation. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will keep my remarks brief because I know you got a big day here, but this is a bill that addresses the fiscal crisis that we have, specifically relative to our state parks. Members, we know that there is a list somewhere in the governor's office right now that may include as many as 70 or more parks and beaches around the state proposed for closure. We are in unprecedented times. We've never had to do this, and I think we all expect that regardless of how this budget plays out, we will indeed have to proceed with some park closures this year. The bill that I present to you today is not a silver bullet to that problem, but it is one tool, a very narrowly tailored and carefully crafted tool that I think will help us keep at least some of these parks open, simply by giving our parks authorities the same authority that they have now to enter into operating agreements with local governments. This simply extends that to nonprofit organizations who in some cases are going to be able to take over operations of state parks. We have narrowly limited this bill. It's not our expectation that this is going to happen all over the state parks system, but there are going to be a few cases in appropriate places around the state where nonprofits can take over, and we want to provide this important flexibility tool to help keep parks open. And with that, I would
Mr. Huffman, your bill has a first or a motion and a second, and do you have witnesses?
Good morning. Tracy Verardo-Torres with the California State Parks Foundation. As Assemblymember Huffman said, this bill is really in response to what is already the budget situation facing our state parks. On behalf of the State Parks Foundation and the nonprofits we work with, we have for 3 years been fighting closure proposals, and we do believe that they will be coming as of the start of the upcoming fiscal year. As a community, we are not willing to sit by and just let the doors to these parks close or to let these parks become vulnerable to other risks of vandalism, theft, illegal activity. And so what AB 42 does is put a tool in front of the state that is necessary to preserve these resources and keep them available to the public. And we ask for your support. Thank you.
Rico Mastrodonato with the Trust for Public Land. This is about public accessibility. State park system is literally the crown jewel of the park system in California, and if they're not open for the public, then obviously there's problems getting people to show up to the parks. Thank you.
Members of the committee, Christopher Turnell here on behalf of the Nature Conservancy for the reasons previously stated in strong support. Thank you.
Morning, members. Teresa Cook for the California Travel Association in strong support.
Other witnesses, name and group, please.
Gretchen Ingbring on behalf of the Planning and Conservation League. We're in support of this bill.
Thank you. Any witnesses in opposition? Seeing and hearing none, any members? Mr. Nielsen.
Assemblymember Huffman, I am certainly in support of your bill, but as it moves to the Senate, I would not ask any consideration amendments here. But I would also suggest that this be opened for consideration and amended to allow private profit organizations. I think they have a fit in this milieu too, and I've argued for such in the last 3 budgets. So I'd ask your open-mindedness and at least have some meeting and discussion on that.
I'm always delighted to meet and discuss with you, Assembly members. So.
Thank you.
Any other members? Okay, seeing or no more testimony, you may close.
Respectfully request your aye vote.
Thank you. That's out on an A roll call with Mr. Nielsen off. Is it? Okay, A roll call. Thank you.
Thank you. What would you like next, Madam Chair? I've got a
suspense candidate in 539.
You've got 539 or 359 suspense candidate, and we've got a roll call vote going on AB 693. So which one would you like?
I will go to 693 and waive presentation on the first suspense candidate.
Thank you. You also have several others, I see,
yes,
on the next
do.
page. Okay, thank you.
All right. AB 693, Madam Chair, is a simple but I think very important bill that will help increase the number of organ and tissue donors we have in the state of California. We have a tremendous... Thank you. There's no opposition to this bill, Madam Chair, and no cost. I respectfully request an aye vote.
Thank you very much. We have witnesses in support.
Miriam Mora with Donate Life California, supporting the bill. Thank you.
Tracy Bryan, board member for Donate Life California, also in support of the bill.
Any witnesses in opposition? Okay, we had a first and a motion and a second, did we not? Okay. Any comments from the dais, members? No. That is your bill enjoys a due pass, but we are going to have a Republican roll call.
Harkey, Donnelly, Nielsen, Nielsen, I, Norby, Wagner,
Thank you. Your bill is out. Now the next one we have here is, that's a consent, and which one?
864 is being heard.
864 is actually being heard, sorry.
Right. 864?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a bill that I think will not only help us with our renewable energy goals and objectives, but also create jobs and support California manufacturers. Move the bill. The existing self-generation incentive program, also known as SGIP, makes one-time upfront incentives available to energy customers to offset the cost of installing renewable energy systems. This bill makes the SGIP more compatible with larger energy customers that currently pay into the program by expanding the size of eligible projects to 10 megawatts and increasing the cap on incentives from 3 megawatts to 5 megawatts. This is an important incentive, members, because it offers us a chance to promote distributed energy generation in areas that can provide very substantial projects. And I think you'll hear from some of my witnesses about some of the exciting possibilities that provides. That'll also help these companies that are doing business here in California to stay in California, to provide jobs, and also meet their AB 32 objectives.
Thank you very much. That bill enjoys a motion and a second. Witnesses in support?
Juanita Martinez with the California Large Energy Consumer Association in support of the bill.
Jose Mejia, California State Council of Labor, in strong support of the bill.
Bernadette Del Chiaro with Environment California, also in strong support.
Any witnesses in opposition? Would you like to close, Mr. Huffman?
Respectfully request your aye vote.
Thank you. That's out on an A roll call.
Thank you.
The rest of the bills are on consent or suspense. Do you wish to present?
Just on one suspense bill, Madam Chair, and that's AB 1299, my forage fisheries bill.
Thank you.
And to be very brief, this bill does two very important things. First, it establishes a state policy of ecosystem-based management of forage fisheries. These are not the big glamorous fish like salmon and some of the big game fish, but they are the critical fish at the lower end of the food chain that sustain much of the web of life in our oceans. And so they're critically important, not just as fisheries, but as contributors to the entire ocean ecosystem. And this bill would require that we treat them as such, that as we make fishery management decisions, that we make them in a way that is consistent with the policy of recognizing the critical ecosystem services that they provide. What this bill is not intended to do is cost millions of dollars to implement, because it, again, applies only to future fishery management decisions that are going to be made in the ordinary course of managing our fisheries anyway. So with me to testify are some witnesses who can speak more specifically to that.
Thank you. Witnesses in support?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. My name is Dr. Jeff Chester. I'm the California Program Director for Oceana, the largest international marine conservation organization. We are currently working with legislative staff and the committee consultant to tighten and clarify the bill language in a way that we are confident will eliminate most of the costs of this bill and ensure that any implementation costs are indeed minimal. And we look forward to working with the Chair on amendments. We believe this forward-looking legislation will ultimately provide economic benefits to the California economy while helping protect our valuable ocean ecosystems and restore fisheries to their former abundance. In respect for the busy agenda, I'll wrap up here, but refer you to the extensive background materials we've provided and our extensive list of support from the environmental community, recreational fishermen, seafood businesses, and scientists. And we're here to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next witness in support?
Chair members, Matt Gannon here on behalf of Audubon, California, in support of the bill.
Hi, my name is Jessica Glanz, representing Save Our Shores, and I'm strongly in support of this legislation.
Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
Madam Chair, Rob Ross, representing the California Fisheries Association, also here on behalf of a number of cities, harbors, ports, districts, fishermen and their crew, processors, and their plant workers. Notwithstanding what the gentleman said prior to my speaking, commercial fishing business does not support this bill. This bill is completely unnecessary, as the Department of Fish and Game and the Pacific Fishery Management Council already have thorough management plans for the fishery. What this would do is add new and confusing terms to the law that would cost millions of dollars to implement. And I would remind the committee that this bill purports to be a good thing for the environment. The environment in this regard is in very good shape. Whale, pinniped, and bird populations are exploding off the coast of California. proving that our current management system works. We don't need to spend millions of dollars and put up to 3,000 people out of business. We ask for your no vote.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition?
Hello. I'm Vince Torrey. I'm the general manager of Tri-Marine Fish Company in San Pedro. I'm also president of the California Wetfish Association in California. I'm here in opposition of this bill. I have a listing of organizations that oppose this measure, ranging from commercial organizations, sport fishing organizations, ports, harbors, scientists, and others. Make no mistake, this bill puts at risk 3,000 jobs that exist in the wet fish industry, made up of fishermen and their crew, processors, their plant workers. It will cost the state of California millions of dollars to perform the literature search required by the bill, recreate new fishery management plans to conform to the new policy created by the bill, develop models to perform mandated analysis for the narrow sliver of California state waters, duplicating what is underway by scientists at the Pacific Fisheries Management Council in their development of the California Current Ecosystem Management Plan. Loss of revenues to the Department of Fish and Game as fisheries fail to meet interpretations of poorly defined concepts only the proponents purport to understand, and landings of fish are curtailed. Litigation costs and go sue to force the state to conform to the vague concepts in the bill. Please hold this bill in committee.
Thank you. Other witnesses?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Scott Govan on behalf of the Del Mar Seafood Company, in opposition for the reasons previously stated. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the dais? Would you like to close?
Simply by reminding the committee, Madam Chair, that this bill does not close or limit any existing fishery, notwithstanding what you've just heard. It is a prospective bill that simply looks to the key decision points that lie ahead when we talk about expanding fisheries, opening new fisheries, that when we're dealing with these critical food chain species, that we think about the broader ecosystem functions that they provide. That's all this bill does, and I respectfully request your aye vote.
Thank you. Your bill's on suspense.
Thank you.
Oh, he's not there. How about Mr. Gatto? Would you like to present? Are you here? There you are. What am I presenting now?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm here to present AB 529, which is a measure that would restore the flexibility to local governments in the manner in which they set certain speed limits. Prior to 2004, local governments were allowed to after conducting a test on the roads, to set the speed limit within a certain 5-mile-per-hour range. In 2004, there were certain changes to the manual in state law that now requires them to round their speed limits up. It's a curious situation where you have certain. This is the only area of the law where we allow scofflaws to set the law, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Have I heard a motion?
Second.
Good. Motion and a second. Any witnesses in support?
Yeah. Hugh Bauer on behalf of the City of Santa Rosa in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any witnesses in opposition? Okay. Anyone from the dais?
Well, I just have to say to the Assistant Speaker, Pro Tem, it's impressive that you're able to get up before your colleagues and present your bill without notes, and so we're very glad to hear that. And I think that some of the local governments would appreciate the flexibility that the bill will provide.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis.
I believe that the member knows his district well, and he had extensive testimony in transportation on this. It went on.
Yes,
and
we
on
did.
and on.
Well, I stand corrected on that.
Thank you. Okay, would you like to close? Your Honor, it has a due pass recommendation. A roll call.
I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A roll call. How about Ms. Mitchell? Is she? Okay. Are you also doing Mr. Fletcher's bill as well? Thank you. Which one would you like to start with?
We'll start with Mr. Fletcher's bill, Madam Chair, AB 1111.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm pleased to join as a co-author with Mr. Fletcher on AB 1111. Homeless youth are among the most vulnerable members of our community. With nowhere else to go, they are frequently ticketed for offenses such as loitering, truancy, and curfew violations. Not being able to pay the fine and often missing their day in court, these youth receive additional fines and penalties and even risk jail time for these offenses. Eventually, courts institute wage garnishment collections for citations related to homelessness, just as they do for parking citations and other violations of the law. AB 1111 provides that wage garnishment for certain homeless-related citations be temporarily delayed for individuals who are under the age of 25 and fall under a definition of homeless consistent with current law.
Your bill's been moved and seconded.
I ask for an aye vote.
Any witnesses in support?
I'm sorry, yes,
Okay.
Ed Howard.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members, Ed Howard with the Children's Advocacy Institute, proud to sponsor this bill. This bill, as the Assembly member indicated, is aimed at helping homeless youth, which are disproportionately our foster youth, end their own homelessness by the sweat of their own brow, simply by discouraging government collections efforts, which would never go on in private industry because it's cost ineffective to government. So it saves the state money, it helps homeless youth pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, and we ask for your aye vote.
Other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Any comments from the dais? Okay, your bill has been moved and seconded and is out on an A roll call. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got a couple more. Madam Chair, I'd like to present on AB 419. I realize it's on suspense, but I'd like to present.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Again, thank you, Madam Chair and members. In California, community care facilities that care for children in child care and foster care and our frail elderly and adult day residential care facilities are only visited once every 5 years. That means one's elderly parent could move into an assisted living facility and licensing not visit within their lifetime. Licensing is critical to ensure basic health and safety for the most vulnerable in our communities. The National Association of Child Care Resource and Referral Programs rates California 47th in the nation in oversight and inspections for child care programs. AB 419 would create a more efficient system of inspections to ensure that every community care facility receives an unannounced visit annually and family child care facilities every other year. Inspections will focus on the use of research-based and piloted key indicators unique to each facility type using a risk assessment system that predicts compliance with the licensing regulations as opposed to the existing, more time-consuming comprehensive review. We are in the process of working with stakeholders in the department to amend the bill to ensure that it is indeed cost neutral. The purpose of this bill is to maximize the dollars currently used and available in community care licensing. I have several witnesses here in support.
Very good. Your first witness in support. First witness in support.
Hello, members. Teresa Cook, representing Atria Senior Living. We are a member of the sponsors, the California Assisted Living Association. In strong support, we have 25 communities in the state of California, so this is an important issue to us.
Good afternoon. Erin Levi, representing the California Assisted Living Association. We are in strong support of this bill. Increased inspections for assisted living communities is our #1 priority. We've been trying to do this for 4 years now, so we're very appreciative of the author for carrying this bill. Thank you.
Very good. Next witness.
Mr. Chairman and members, Tim Fitzharris for the Child Development Policy Institute, the California Child Development Administrators Association, the Professional Association of Childhood Education, and the Early Care and Education Coalition strongly in support of this bill.
Very good. Any additional witnesses in support? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Teresa Renkin, Alzheimer's Association in support.
Witnesses in opposition?
We had, just for the record, Mr. Chair, we had an additional witness from the California Resource and Referral Network. They were scheduled to be here at noon, so they didn't make it.
Okay, very good. The record will reflect that you have additional witnesses in support. Any witnesses in opposition? Hearing and seeing none. Members, any questions for our author on the suspense candidate? Hearing and seeing none. Ms. Mitchell, would you like to close?
I ask for your support at the appropriate time.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Mitchell, for that presentation. On to ACR 41, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Very good.
Today I'm presenting ACR 41, which would designate a portion of State Highway Route 405 in the County of L.A. as the CHP Officer Philip Dennis Ortiz Memorial Highway.
Second.
I ask for your support.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Any questions? Mr. Norby.
In line with the Transportation Committee Chairman's request that a moratorium be placed on such requests, I'll be voting no on this and all other requests to rename stretches of highways or freeways. That request did not receive a majority vote in the Transportation Committee, Mr. Chair, but it did receive substantial support, including mine, and I will be honoring the spirit of that because there are costs in here as well as issues regarding a proliferation of such signage along our highways which does not aid the motorist in using the highway and doesn't look at other alternatives such as plaques and other kinds of recognitions which might be more useful to the public.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Norby. Mr. Davis.
I just want to say I'm not a member of the perfect society in the building, but one of the things that I think is important is that for men and women who give their lives, and I know that many of those of us in public service do give our lives, but the level of involvement of law enforcement officers is a very great and personal level of personal contact that I think is worthy of recognition for this kind of bill that or resolution that Assemblymember Mitchell has put forth, and so I strongly support this effort, particularly for those men and women who serve our state and who have given their lives.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Ms. Mitchell, would you like to close?
I appreciate your support, Mr. Davis, and your consistency in your voting record, Mr. Norby. I was assigned temporarily to sit in on the Transportation Committee the day that bill came up, that recommendation from the committee chair came up. And it's my understanding that the Senate side has not concurred, and so it was my office's and my decision to continue on with this resolution until we get clear in terms of what both houses choose to do in this situation. The officer was a constituent of mine, and I felt it was my responsibility to continue to push this forward based on the past practices of this body in honor of his dedication to all the residents of the state of California. And with that, I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. That measure is out with an A roll call with Mr. Norby recorded as a no vote. Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Mr. Calderon, would you like to present on Assembly Bill 155? Very good. This is a candidate for suspense, Mr. Calderon.
Oh, I thought this is a candidate for suspense, or was it for a vote straight up?
Assembly Bill 155 is a candidate for suspense.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Would you like to waive presentation on
Yes.
that? Mr. White seems to think you do.
Yes.
Very good. Assembly Bill 1015 does enjoy a due pass recommendation. Would you like to present on that measure?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under existing law, the State Department of Social Services
Move the bill.
must conduct a child and family service review system. It's an effort by the legislature to be more proactive and not to be reactive when we hear of some of these tragic stories that have happened in the foster care system. This bill adds to the list of stakeholders that should be consulted when doing these review plans. And then it also requires that once the plan is developed pursuant to law, the Board of Supervisors include a separately titled provision that lists and provides the rationale for proposed operational improvements identified during the stakeholder process. It's a big report, so this requires a breakout of the rationale as it relates to the consultations with people listed under this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Calderon. The measure has been moved and seconded. Your first witness in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, Ed Howard with the Children's Advocacy Institute, proud to co-sponsor this bill with SEIU. This bill, as the Assembly member said, frees up social workers to do more social work and less paperwork simply by directing existing review and performance programs to consider operational improvements that can be done in the workday lives of social workers to free them up to care for kids rather than do other things. And we ask for your aye vote.
Very good. Thank you for your testimony. Any additional witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Questions for our author? Hearing and seeing none, the measure was moved by Mr. Gatto, seconded by Mr. Davis, and the measure is out on a B roll call. Thank you, Mr. Calderon. Mr. Nielsen.
Bill for Shasta County Deputy Sheriff Dennis Sullivan, who died in a traffic accident responding to a potentially violent situation.
Move the bill.
Very good, Mr. Nielsen. Thank you for the presentation. Very good. We are going to move that matter. It is out on an A roll call with Mr. Norby absent. Now expect him to vote no when he comes back into the room. Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. Mr. Solorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to begin with AB 315.
Very good.
Possible. Mr. Chairman, members, this bill is a consensus measure that conforms California's surplus line insurance law to the recently enacted federal financial reform law.
Move the
law
bill.
requires conformity by July of this year. I ask for your aye vote.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Solorio. The measure has been moved and seconded. Mr. Witness.
Let's do it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, John Norwood on behalf of the National Association of Professional Surplus Lines Offices, the California Insurance Wholesalers Association, and insurance brokers and agents of the West. We support this bill. It's important to bring California in compliance with recently enacted federal law. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Norwood. Any additional witnesses in support?
Michael Martinez here on behalf of the Department of Insurance. We are the sponsor of this bill, and no known opposition, and we ask for your aye vote.
Very good. Any additional witnesses in opposition? Members, questions for Mr. Solorio? Hearing and seeing none, Mr. Solorio, that measure is out on an A roll call. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Now I'd like to present on AB 405. It is a candidate for suspense. Just very briefly, this bill would authorize and encourage community college districts to partner with K-12 school districts and other public agencies on joint use projects. Money for this would come from bond funding, not general fund. So as you consider the suspense, I hope you take that into account. Finally, in this era of diminished resources, we should be doing more things in collaboration with other agencies for better use of our public dollars. I hope you consider that during the suspense process.
Thank you, Mr. Solorio. We certainly will. Your first witness in support.
Casey Elliott on behalf of Rancho Santiago and Coast Community College districts in support of this measure. As Mr. Solorio said, we think this is a wise investment of leveraging public dollars for needed infrastructure. Thank you.
Very good. Next witness.
Mr. Chairman and Committee, Bonnie Slauson representing the Community College League, and we too are in support of this measure and urge a yes vote. Thank you. Bye.
Very good. Any additional witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Questions, comments, members? Very good. This measure, Mr. Solorio, would you like to close?
I ask for your aye vote as it moves forward through the process.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Solorio. The item will remain on suspense. Madam Vice Chair Harkey, would you like to present on your measure? And if Mr. Norby is within earshot, we would like to take up his measure afterwards, and the chair will present his, and we shall be done after we do some housekeeping. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Norby.
Thank you. I am presenting for myself and Ms. Conway. These, again, are naming bills. The State Highway, ACR 33 is my bill. It's the Richard T. Steed Memorial Highway in San Diego to San Clemente. And I have Assemblywoman Conway's. Do you want me to do all of them? Or
no, let's go ahead and dispense with your measure. AC 33, we will take that as your presentation. Any questions, members? Hearing and seeing none, that measure is due pass recommendation. Mr. Norby, it's a naming measure, so the measure will be out on an A roll call with Mr. Norby voting no. Ms. Conway's measure is ACR 15, also a naming measure. It has a due pass recommendation. Ms. Harkey, would you like to?
Thank you. Request your support for Highway Route 198 to the Detective Monty L. Conley and Detective Joe L. Landon Memorial Highway.
Very good. Mr. Blumenfield.
I just want to make one comment on all these naming bills. I like Mr. Norby, actually, I supported the chair's desire to ban all the naming bills, and I do support that. But until we have something consistent on that, I will continue to support the individual measures until we can have a consistent policy.
Very good. Any additional questions? Mr. Norby.
Since it's a sensitive, symbolic subject, Mr. Chair, I want to clarify. I do believe recognition is in order. I just don't think a freeway sign is the proper way to do it. When I was mayor of Fullerton, we did have a CHP officer who was gunned down in our city. We had a plaque near where it happened. We had a ceremony. The plaque is still there. People can light candles. The plaque explained how he died, and I just think we ought to look at that more than a freeway sign naming a stretch of freeway which will have no significance or utility to the motorist.
Thank you, Mr. Norby. Mr. Davis.
Point of clarification, my understanding from the Department, California Department of Transportation, that these signs are paid for by a non-state source. So, in fact, the state is not expending any revenues on these signs. Another entity, is responsible.
That's right, Mr. Davis. These signs are paid for through donations. Thank you for the clarification. Ms. Harkey, would you like to close?
I just request an aye vote, please.
Very good. That measure is out on... I'm sorry. May we entertain a motion to move this measure? Mr. Gatto moves it. Mr. Blumenfield seconds it. The measure is out on an A roll call with Mr. Norby voting no. Thank you, Ms. Harkey.
ACR 37, Ms. Conway.
That's the one that we just dispensed. Oh, very good.
We
We'll
did
move to that
15.
one, too. That was
Okay.
ACR 15.
Yeah, this
now
is...
we are doing ACR 37.
Highway Patrol Officer Justin McGregory Memorial Highway, and I requestfully request an aye vote.
Mr. Blumenfield moves the measure. Ms. Campos seconds it. The measure is out on an A roll call with Mr. Norby voting no.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harkey. Very good. Ms. Harkey, if you wouldn't mind presiding, I will present my measure.
You're presenting on AB 1358, I believe, Mr. Fuentes?
That's right, Madam Vice
Thank
Chair.
you.
I am presenting on Assembly Bill 1358. Members, this bill will bring in some much-needed revenue to the courts and counties choosing to participate in this discretionary program. Last year, as part of the budget, the legislature adopted a one-time amnesty program for infractions. This program establishes a 6-month window where individuals who have failed to pay infraction fines and penalties may pay 50% of what they owe and be released from further liability associated with those infractions. I respectfully urge an aye vote. Today with me I do have Libby Sanchez from the California Public Defenders Association, the sponsor of the bill, to testify and answer any questions.
Been moved, and now your second. Mr. Calderon? There you go. Okay. Thank you.
As amended.
Libby Sanchez on behalf of the California Public Defenders Association. As the author mentioned, this bill is completely discretionary on the part of courts and counties. It does not include vehicle code misdemeanors for DUIs or traffic instances where injury has occurred or for parking violations. And if counties and courts choose to further limit the number of misdemeanors included, it's completely in their discretion to do so. A similar program was implemented in the 90s and raked in a lot of much-needed revenue to counties that chose to participate. We think in this economic climate, it's a win-win. So for those reasons, we're in strong support.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Thank you. Your bill has been moved and seconded. It's out on an A roll call as amended.
Thank you, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you.
We just have the Lara call for motion. We need a motion.
We need Laura, and then we'll take up consent.
You just need a motion on Lara's 1102.
Very good. We will now dispense with Mr. Lara's measure, 1102. Members looking for a motion to move that measure? Very good. It's been moved by Mr. Blumenfield, seconded by Ms. Campos, and that measure is out on an B roll call. Very good, members. Now we are dealing with the consent calendar. Looking for a motion? Ms. Mitchell moves the consent calendar. It's seconded by Mr. Gatto. The measure consent calendar is out on an A roll call. Thank you, members. This will conclude today's business before the Appropriations Committee.